Hi, I'm author Sean O'Neill, and this is number 0874, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0784. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, John David Graham is the author of the novel Running as Fast as I Can, and the founder of Good Samaritan Home. How did Good Samaritan Home start?
I've had a series of restarts in my life, probably about 8 careers. I just couldn't find my niche, and I was at 53 years old, and I didn't know where I fit. Most people were talking about retirement, and I felt like there was still something I could do. So my wife and I decided to do what we considered our passion, was to help those people who came to our door, homeless people, but had nowhere to go. So what I did was we bought the oldest house in town, and then we remodeled it and used one of our bedrooms as a temporary homeless shelter.
Legendary Hollywood agent Harry Abrams is the author of Let's Do Launch. A Hollywood agent dishes on how to make your business and career take off.
The inspiration for writing the book was I would encounter people who wanted to change careers, didn't like the career choices they'd made, mainly attorneys, etc., and wanted to get in the entertainment industry. And I said, well, the best way to get in the entertainment industry is to get into the talent agency business. So I decided I'm going to write a book about the steps one takes and the path one takes to get into the entertainment business, primarily in artist representation.
Science writer Andrew Fazekas, the night sky guy, talks about China's plans to go asteroid busting.
Obviously, China doesn't release too much details, but what we do know is that this is a very similar mission that comes on the heels of what NASA already did a couple of years ago with the DART mission, where they impacted a small little binary asteroid. China now planning to visit another small asteroid. They're planning to visit this small asteroid. They want to impact it. They'll have a mothership that will watch the impact happen close up, so it'll have a wonderful ringside seat.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guests later. The person who told you this was show number 0784 was Sean O'Neill, a best-selling author and award-winning screenwriter with several successful titles under his belt, including The Plague, his most successful book, and Jill, which won an International Impact Book Award this past July. Thank you very much, Sean, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. An Applebee's restaurant in Portage, Indiana, became the site of a scuffle on August the 2nd. Portage Police Department officers arrived in response to a report of a verbal disturbance. There they found 28-year-old Shanisha Cobbs, who had been loudly arguing with the store's manager. Cobb's companions were under the impression that the restaurant's $15.99 all-you-can-eat deal applied to the whole group, and when the manager explained that the deal was per person, Cobb said the menu didn't specify that. It did. The rabble-rouser then verbally accosted another couple leaving the restaurant. That's when she was placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct. Well, clearly, Cobbs was mistaken about the all-you-can-eat offer, but even according to their commercials, the Applebee's all-you-can-eat offer can make one lose their mind.
Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. Up in here.
All you can eat riblets, shrimp, and boneless wings are back for just $15.99 at Applebee's.
A Russian man who got a vasectomy after fathering 4 children is preparing to sue the medical clinic that botched the surgery and caused him to father a 5th child. In 2022, after his 4th child, Maxim, a 45-year-old man from the Russian city of Ufa, decided to get a vasectomy. He visited a local medical clinic and agreed to pay 30,000 rubles, that's about $330 US, for the operation. The procedure was successful and Maxim was discharged from the clinic after only a few hours. Everything was fine until early last year when Maxim's wife told him that she was pregnant again. In November, he became a father for the 5th time. When Maxim contacted the clinic for an explanation, he was asked to undergo a paternity test and a spermogram to confirm that he was still able to father children. Both tests confirmed that he was indeed still very fertile, but instead of taking responsibility, the clinic called his case a medical miracle and allegedly told him that he should be glad about having a baby. The clinic offered to settle the dispute by returning the cost of the vasectomy to the client, but Maxim refused the offer. He and his family have reportedly lawyered up to sue the clinic for moral damages and for upcoming expenses associated with raising a 5th child. You know, the publicity of this story has gone all the way around the world, and I hope the lawsuit will also cover the therapy this unwanted child will eventually need. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, let this next story be a warning that quenching someone else's thirst can get you arrested. Mayor Benji Cranford of Thompson, Georgia, was arrested on August the 14th after a grand jury indicted him for allegedly supplying a 750-milliliter bottle of Seagram's Extra Dry Gin to prisoners on a roadside work crew. The indictment said Cranford bought the bottle on June the 4th and left it in a ditch along the path of the work crew from the Jefferson County Correctional Institution. Cranford was charged with furnishing prohibited items to inmates and criminal attempt to commit a felony. I guess Mayor Cranford really bought into that old Seagram's jingle.
Life should be 1 part Seagram's, 2 parts fun.
Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? John David Graham is the founder of Good Samaritan Home, which is a housing mentoring program helping men and women restart their lives after prison. He's also written a novel called Running as Fast as I Can. John joins us via Zoom from Dayton, Ohio. Hi, John.
Good morning.
Thanks for being on the program with us. First of all, how did Good Samaritan Home start with you?
That's a very simple question, but the answer is fairly complex. Well, what happened is that I've had a series of restarts in my life, probably about 8 careers. I just couldn't find my niche, and I was at 53 years old, and I didn't know where I fit. Most people were talking about retirement, and I felt like there was still something I could do. So my wife and I decided to do what we considered our passion, was to help those people who came to our door, homeless people, but had nowhere to go. So what I did was we bought the oldest house in town, and then we remodeled it and used one of our bedrooms as a temporary homeless shelter. Now, that was very difficult, obviously. So we expanded it, but over the next year, we were able to buy an old house next door, and we started a shelter. And we were getting people off the street temporarily. But what happened was the Department of Correction came to us and said, could you take some of our people coming out of prison who are homeless? And we contracted with the Department of Correction, and we offer what we call mentoring for people coming out of prison. It's not a counseling program, it's not a rehabilitation program, but it's simply connecting with people with their most immediate need, and that's housing and a safe place. And one house grew to 2 houses and 3 houses, and now we have 19 houses and 10 staff members, and we've been able to help almost 2,500 men and women coming from prison.
Wow. Now, I understand that you at one point were homeless yourself, and I'm just curious to know what was the situation that led to your homelessness, and how did you get out of it?
Well, like I say, I had been through a series of jobs. They were good jobs, but I just didn't fit in. And so had been a fireman at one point, which is an ideal job for many, but I wasn't satisfied with it, so I quit. I ended up living in my truck, and I was going to travel across the country and write that novel that I had in the back of my head. And I was sitting in the back of the truck with a Royal typewriter, if you remember those.
Absolutely.
And I realized I had nothing to say. And it was October. It was in Michigan. It was getting cold. And I realized that my most immediate need was finding a place to park my truck for the night because I had nowhere to sleep. And then they repossessed my truck. And that is when I met my wife. And she had a house and a job. And she helped me turn my life around. And over the years, there were still a series of job restarts because I couldn't find my place. And my point was that I know how vulnerable people can be, what we consider middle-class people, because of circumstances. And the idea of what's the weather like outside? Where am I going to sleep tonight? That can be a consuming thought. And with the homeless, that's all they can think about is that, where am I going to sleep tonight? I even had one guy come to me at the door whose feet were nearly frostbit because he was without shoes in the winter walking the streets. And we had to take him to the hospital first. So every time I see somebody coming from prison, I've never been to prison, but I've been homeless. And I know what it's like to say, where am I going to sleep tonight? And how can you think about a job when you don't even know where you're going to be that night? And that to me is the probably the most basic need we all have: shelter and then food. And we try to provide both as much as we can.
Well, it sounds like you're providing a third essential need, and that is the fact that when people come out of prison or when people are ostracized just generally, no one wants anything to do with them, and you just reaching out and showing a helping hand probably goes a long way to their mental health.
Interesting you should say that, because one of the chapters in my novel, it's fictional, but it's based on a lot of true things. And Daniel Robbins is his name, and he's in San Francisco, and he's a middle-class boy and educated, but he was homeless because he was beaten up on the streets of San Francisco and robbed. And so he's wandering the streets trying to panhandle just to get some money for food. And for a week or 2 weeks and 3 weeks, he's struggling to survive. And he says that nobody sees me. I'm invisible to them. They don't even know I exist. And that's, to me, is the key element with the homeless. All they want to do is they need to know that somebody sees them. And we do that by listening. Sometimes we like to tell people what they need to do with their lives, but what we try to do is just listen. And often people can come to the right answers simply by letting them talk and then just giving them what I would consider suggestions for directions.
Well, clearly what you do with the Good Samaritan Home is something that adds to someone else's life. But I'm just wondering, in the process, what does it do for you?
You know, that's an interesting question, because I was just thinking about that recently. I have days when I feel overwhelmed with it all. And I was into myself and feeling just turning a little self-pity. So what I did was I had to move a refrigerator, and it bothered me because I had to do that. But I asked one of the guys to help me, and I would say that he's probably challenged at best mentally. And he'd just been out of prison. And I asked him to help me, and he did such a great job that I bought him some lunch at the local fast food, and we were talking, and he said, I understand you're a writer. I'm writing a book too. Will you read it for me and tell me what you think? And I was so impressed that he would open up to me like that I told him to just give me a chapter, and I'll certainly look at it, because I'd like to read your story. And you would think that I told him that he was now the archangel, because he felt like somebody heard his personal feelings of self-worth. But I came away feeling like I was feeling better. I had done, not that I'd done something good, that he had made me feel better. And my day was changed because of him. So I would say that when I can get out with my residents and just meet them on their level and treat them like human beings, I feel like my life is validated too.
Well, you certainly have found your calling, and I'm just curious to know, because you said earlier that you had so many jobs and you didn't really cotton up to any of them. I'm just curious, when you were growing up as a kid, what to you was your ideal job when you were a grown-up, and has that changed over the several jobs you've had?
When I was raised in the conservative evangelical tradition, so I had always anticipated that I'd become a minister. But when I actually graduated college, I became disillusioned, very disillusioned with the church and my faith. And so I walked away from that for a long time. Eventually, when I did try to go back into the church, or into the formal ministry, I found that the church had become much more political than I was committed to do. And so I determined that I still believe in the doctrines of the church. I still have my faith, but I don't have my faith in the structure that I used to have. So I found that in the street, the church is the most effective, helping people where they are, not where we are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The book is called Running as Fast as I Can, and people can also go to your website and find out more about Good Samaritan Home. Is there anything that you need from the general population that can help you in helping others?
I would say the reason I wrote the book was to tell the story of what it's like that we all deserve second chances. We desperately need a second chance. So I can give you statistics all day long, but with the book, it's a very readable, what I call a page-turner story about one man's struggle to find himself. Over his lifetime, he feels like he's always running behind everybody else. So that is the story that I believe tells the second chance story in a way that people will read it. So if people want to help, if they would read that and then go out and try to practice that with other people, give somebody else a second chance, I think we can change our corner of the world at least.
Excellent. Well, John, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. It was much appreciated.
I very much enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Peter.
John David Graham, founder of Good Samaritan Home and the author of the novel Running as Fast as I Can. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0784, and you'll find links to John's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/The Stuff File Program.
Coming to you from Canada, the land of universal healthcare, colorful money, and the correct spelling of the word theater. This is The Stuff File with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to legendary Hollywood agent Harry Abrams. He's the author of Let's Do Launch, a Hollywood agent dishes on how to make your business and career take off. Plus, Andrew Fazekas, the science writer, and the night sky guy is on to talk about, among other things, China and asteroid busting. Yes. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, and of course much more Stuff All News, including some right here, right now. Now, I don't know what it is, but in the last little while, there seems to be a rash of stories, particularly in Florida, where people are being arrested for battery that involves food. And I don't mean battering food. Here's the latest one. When police arrived at the residence, evidence of the ravioli attack was splattered on the victim. In the latest food attack plaguing the U.S., a 21-year-old woman, angry that her sister would not share grub she brought home, was arrested on a ravioli a la battery charge. Cops say Nakia Davis got mad at her sister after the victim did not allow the defendant to have any of the food that she delivered to the pair's home. The miffed sister retaliated by throwing a plate of raviolis at her sibling. When a patrolman arrived at the Clearwater property, the victim still had sauce from the raviolis on her. Davis reportedly admitted to the ravioli tossing, which was witnessed by the victim's boyfriend. Charged with domestic battery, a misdemeanor, Davis spent a night in jail before being released on her own recognizance. A judge has ordered Davis to have no contact with her sister. The arrest report does not indicate what kind of ravioli was used in the alleged attack, or whether the pasta was coated in a tomato, pesto, cheese, or butter-based topping. You know, about 2 months ago, we had a story about a brother and sister battle involving a thrown chicken wing. What I want to know is, who is calling the cops in on all of these cases? Is someone taking Animal House way too seriously? Japanese entertainment company Sanrio, the company behind the Hello Kitty brand, would like to clear up a little misconception about their most famous cartoon character created in 1974 by employee Yuko Shimizu. Jill Koch, the company's senior vice president of marketing and brand management, insistently says, Hello Kitty is not a cat. She's actually a little girl. However, Shimizu has said that her design is a white cat with a red bow in its hair, and that when I was a child, I got a small white kitten from my father for a birthday present. In 2013, just the Hello Kitty portion of Sanrio's portfolio brought in $8 billion US in sales. And fans insist it's a cat. Well, with this income, Hello Kitty is not a cat, it's a cash cow. So the company rep, Jill Koch, says it's not a cat, but the creator and all of the fans say that it is a cat. Gee, perhaps Koch needs more clues.
I gave everyone extra clues, Hello Kitty.
Yeah, sure. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a Floridian pleaded guilty last week in an Australian court after they were caught attempting to smuggle a 24-carat gold-plated gun down under, and they did a backflip before entering their plea.
Isn't it rich?
Liliana Goodson, who uses they-them pronouns, said they were on their way to a clown institute in Sydney.
Send in the clouds.
That's when they were stopped at Sydney Airport with a Colt 45-style pistol and ammunition in their luggage in May of 2023.
But where are the clouds?
Goodson also shared that they were carrying a cat spine, squirrel feet, and rabbit pee. Wow. The question, do you have anything to declare, seems inadequate in this case. Anyway, as I mentioned, they backflipped and pled guilty to importing the handgun and ammunition. Goodson has been awaiting trial in Australia for 6 months. They are facing 2 charges of intentionally importing prohibited goods. Goodson has since failed to get into clown school.
There ought to be clowns.
They say they are pursuing the acting route. Oh, no need to give up, Liliana. I'm sure after your sentence, you can try the Sydney Clown Institute in, say, maybe 12 months.
Well, maybe next year.
Wow, she can really hold a note. And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Harry Abrams is a legendary Hollywood agent who has commanded attention in that profession for over 60 years. He has represented and befriended some of the biggest entertainment household names. He's also written a new book called Let's Do Launch. A Hollywood agent dishes on how to make your business and career take off. He joins us via Zoom from California. Hi, Harry.
Hi, how you doing there, Peter?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. I very much appreciate it. You have had such an illustrious career, and judging by the title of your book, Let's Do Launch, A Hollywood Agent Dishes on How to Make Your Business and Career Take Off, do you believe that all of the stuff that you've learned through the business of being an agent are transferable to other people's industries as well?
Well, I hope so. The inspiration for writing the book was I would encounter people who wanted to change careers, didn't like the career choices they'd made, mainly attorneys, etc., and wanted to get in the entertainment industry. And I said, well, the best way to get in the entertainment industry is to get into the talent agency business. So I decided I'm going to write a book about the steps one takes and the path one takes to get into the entertainment business, primarily in artist representation. So that's how the book comes about.
Now, I understand that in your own career path, you started out wanting to be an actor.
That's right. Well, let me put it another way. It wasn't me wanting to be an actor. It was my mother, when I was a child, wanting me to be an actor. But after 4 years at UCLA and a business degree and some period of time in the U.S. Army in the service, I decided I would go into the entertainment industry, specifically not as a performer, but behind the scenes, dealing with the business side of the entertainment industry. And I really loved actors. I'm primarily a huge theater goer, so I really enjoyed coming across actors, helping to launch their careers.
Did your career decision by going in behind the scenes and working as a talent agent, did that placate in any way, shape, or form the goals and the lofty goals that your mother had for you?
Well, she's unfortunately deceased, or has been deceased for some 20 years. So,
but I mean, when you first went into it, when you first went into it.
When I first went into it, it did placate it to a certain degree. Yes, it did.
You have discovered some very influential people. What is it about some of the traits that these people have? And I'll just list some names. Jennifer Lopez, Kerry Washington, Liam Neeson, Sterling K. Brown, Katie Holmes. What is it about these people? Can you pick talent just by seeing them, talking to them? Is there something that they give off that you recognize that person has the potential of being a star?
Well, the answer is yes. What I see in them is They have a great deal of presence in speaking to me, or if I'm watching them in a theatrical presentation, I can see that they communicate well with the audience. There's a certain electricity, a charisma that they have that causes the audience to be attracted to them. It's like a magnet. And there certainly is something about these people that causes me to respond to them. And I think I'm only one agent. There's hundreds of agents, especially over the years, or numbers of them, and they are attracted by the same magnetism. It's a presence on stage, it's their voice, it's their look, it's the way they handle themselves, how they communicate to the audience. Those are things that I'm attracted to.
Well, you mentioned one of the things, how they handle themselves, and I want to hone in on that a little bit because some people can have all the talent in the world, but they don't necessarily have the offstage presence to command a profession like this. Some people are, for lack of a better term, just the wrong personality, even though they might be the greatest singer, the greatest actor. Do you look for that when you find someone and you think, oh, I'm going to represent this person because this person is going the right direction and they have their head screwed on straight?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that certainly is what might attract me to them at the outset, but it's more so when I watch them on stage performing that I see that they have an electricity about them, that they're like a magnet and will attract the right type of individual is in a position to do something for them, to promote them, to make a living for them. Those are the things that attract me. And so in speaking to someone, I don't necessarily always respond, but if it's better if I am able to watch them on stage or to maybe even watch them on screen on a small little 1 or 2 minute presentation. But quite frankly, especially if someone is attractive, male or female, and has a presence about them, I would certainly respond to them. As to whether I can get them launched or not is another issue. I have to persuade and convince others who are in a position of hiring them and employing them. I have to convince and persuade them to give them a shot, give them a chance. And then once they get on film, hopefully the rest is history.
As I said, you had a very illustrious career. You started an agency, the Abrams Artist Agency, and it ran for very long, successful years under your helm. And I'm just curious to know, because all comedians, for instance, make jokes about agents. Agents depicted in films never really come off in the best of light. But that's not the personality that you had as an agent. What made you different as an agent? And what is it about the stereotype of agents that's wrong as far as you're concerned?
Well, quite frankly, that question would better be posed to one of my clients. They're in a better position to respond to that question. But I rather think that it's the dedication that I have to the actor. It's the time I spent with them, the guidance, direction I gave them, acting coaches I put them with, my continual persistence and being in their lives, being there for them every inch of the way, answering any of their questions that they may have. What should I wear? How should I act? What should I do? What am I going to do on this audition? Should I rehearse? Do I need to have this scene down pat? I give them all kinds of advice. But quite frankly, the bottom line is it's really up to them, and it's up to the buyer, the producer, the person who's going to buy the talent, the casting director, as to what they think of the talent. I may think the talent is the greatest thing since Rice Krispies, but it's up to the buyer as to whether they fit the character, the role they have to cast, and what they think about them.
Well, what part of your job or what percentage of your job do you feel that you have to convince someone, either the talent that they are as talented as they are, or the bookers, producers, directors that you want your talent to be in front of? Do you have to do a lot of convincing on both parts?
Oh, yes, you do. You have to, first of all, you got to get them the opportunity. And so you have to persuade the casting director or the director to at least give the talent a shot, give them a chance. And perhaps you have some film that you can show to the prospective booker of the talent. And if you can't, then you try to have the booker watch the talent either on screen, or perhaps if they're appearing somewhere in the theater, on Broadway, off Broadway, off Broadway, in the theater in Hollywood, wherever, is to persuade and convince the producer, listen, this person looks the role, the age of the role, certainly I think will be very convincing portraying the role. Why don't you go take a look at the talent and see whether you agree with me? And I guess it's over the years I've gained and earned a reputation of being convincing, being correct, being right, making the right decision. Certainly, as you just spoke a moment ago, my background of discovering and launching some very important talent over the years and representing them for some good part of their early parts of their career, first year, first 2 years, 3 years, certainly speaks for itself. And so I do have the, not the clout, but I do certainly have, I certainly am convincing enough to a prospective buyer or booker of my talent to at least give the artist that I recommend, or the artists, plural, a chance, a shot at it. And then it's up to them to make the decision. I don't make the decision.
You sold your agency in 2018, and I'm just curious to know, in the 60 years you were working in the business, what are the biggest changes to the very business that you were in, good, bad, or indifferent, during that period of time?
Well, the biggest changes, I think, would be, yes, you're correct. I sold the agency 6-7 years ago. I had trained a number of agents in our New York and in our Los Angeles offices. We had about 150 people with the company when I sold it. And I sold it to 3 people who had worked for me for many, many years. And they took over and they ran the business. The biggest changes, I think, are primarily the exposure that performers have has changed markedly with the advent of social media. Social media now is very, very important and has been a huge change in the entertainment industry. It causes people to say, well, gee, if hundreds or thousands of people are responding to these individuals and listen to them and watch them work and like them and repeat their names and go to see their work, watch them on television, listen to them in social media, they must be doing something right. So obviously, I think social media is a huge issue in change over the years. It's not all the agent work that gets them to that point. It's also the performer himself or herself schooling themselves, taking acting lessons, performing, critiquing their work, trying to improve. All of that goes into them being selected. So that, for me, social media has been a huge change in the business.
Well, congratulations on your extremely illustrious career, and I'm glad to see that you not only are sharing your memoir, but you're sharing advice for people who can follow in your footsteps, not only in this business, but in others. The book is called Let's Do Launch, A Hollywood Agent Dishes on How to Make Your Business and Career Take Off. Harry, I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. Good to talk to you. Thank you, Peter. Have a great day.
Legendary Hollywood agent Harry Abrams, author of Let's Do Launch, A Hollywood Agent Dishes on How to Make Your Business and Career Take Off. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0784, and you'll find links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, My Interviews with Two Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, My Interviews with Two Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Coming to you from Canada, a place where fighting is frowned upon, unless it's on an ice rink. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Now, the Stuff File presents Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. It's radio that's out of this world.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky, and also National Geographic's Stargazer's Atlas, the ultimate guide to the night sky. And Andrew, while we wait for Bennu to kill us all, China is getting ready to deflect another asteroid away from Earth.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. Obviously, China doesn't release too much details. They keep a lot of the planning close to their vest. But what we do know is that this is a very similar mission that comes on the heels of what NASA already did a couple of years ago with the DART mission, where they impacted in a small little binary asteroid. There's two asteroids, and this was like a big one that orbits a smaller one, and they impacted this smaller one that orbits the larger asteroid, and it was a very, very successful mission, so much so that actually we're planning to go back and visit it again back in 2026 with a little follow-up mission to see what kind of damage we did to this small asteroid. But with that said, China now has planning to visit another small asteroid. It's got a very unceremonious name, 2015 XF261. It doesn't come as close as the asteroids that DART, NASA's mission. That one is about 7 million kilometers away. This one is a whopping 50 million kilometers away from Earth. And they're planning to visit this small asteroid that's only about 30 meters across. They want to impact it. They'll have a mothership that will watch the impact happen close up. So it'll have a wonderful ringside seat. That should be very impressive to see when it happens. We don't have very much details of the timing. Expectations are probably a launch date of something in the 2027, 2028, definitely before 2030 is what they're targeting, the China National Space Administration is.
This sounds like astrological skeet shooting.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's not an easy task, obviously, to do. A lot of engineering going into it. But I think it's really fascinating that China deems this an important enough task to do. I think it's has a lot to do with showcasing their abilities, of their prowess in terms of space exploration. I mean, they're doing it in the interest of planetary defense. But to do an asteroid impact mission, it is very difficult to do, and I think that's what they're trying to showcase to the world, that they're up there in their abilities and they can compete with NASA.
Well, let's go to Mars. I understand that the Perseverance Mars rover has begun an 820-foot climb up Witch Hazel Hill, and this leads me to a deeper question. Who the heck is naming stuff on Mars?
Yeah, this is the actual team that at NASA, at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, that that actually does the driving, the remote driving. They see different landmarks and they name them, and they have the ability to do their own naming. And they have fun with sometimes they name it after colleagues retired or colleagues that have passed away. And sometimes they really do have fun naming them for different things. In terms of Witch Hazel Hill, part of the naming is that it's a very light colored material that they're seeing on the long range cameras they have been seeing, and reminded them, I guess, of witch hazel compound. So it's that's where the name comes from. They're really looking to climb this hill on the side of this large crater that Perseverance has landed in, because they feel there might be some really neat organic compounds. There's hints that this area was once an ancient lake, and they're looking to identify, to see if there was any life. I mean, we're talking potentially habitable ancient environments. And this has never been seen up close, this area. So they've pegged this area as the next place to go. This is going to be a slog for the rover, because there's like up to a 30 degrees inclination that it'll have to climb, and it's going to take a few months to get to the top. But once it does reach the top of this hill, it should get a great overview of the entire crater that stretches for, over 20 kilometers.
Wow. Now, speaking of water on Mars, I understand that there's an ocean's worth of water that may be buried on the red planet. But the question is, can we get to it?
This is a really interesting, because something, you and I have talked so much about Mars and the idea of water, finding water. And, NASA's mantra in exploration of Mars has been follow the water. Since the earliest missions in the 1960s that snapped all those orbital pictures, we see evidence clearly that water once flowed on the surface of the red planet. And we can see that in the form of these huge carved channels that show that liquid water rushed through them, ancient lake beds, beach heads that have been formed. It's just everywhere, that evidence. But the water has disappeared, and that has remained a big mystery, is what happened with all that water. Well, we think that with this latest discovery, that we found where a lot of it has gone. Maybe not all of it, but probably a big chunk of that water has seeped into the ground, is now found in reservoirs caught between cracks and crevices, somewhere between 10 to 20 kilometers underground in the crust of Mars. Is it going to be accessible? That's a big question. I don't think at this point, even Elon Musk with his billions of dollars and his planning couldn't access this water as it is, as the ones that we found. Now, this discovery was thanks to a little retired lander. It's a stationary lander called InSight that got retired a couple of years ago, and they're still analyzing the data. That's where we found this discovery, actually buried in this data of size. It's actually seismic data, Peter. It's really interesting. This InSight lander, its goal was to find Mars quakes, tremors, vibrations underground Mars, and it actually discovered over 1,300 of these vibrations, and they've been analyzing the results and from this, and they can actually look at how the tremors move, how the signals are received, and they can tell them what structures are underground based on how the speed and how these signals actually are retrieved. And by analyzing that data, they've discovered these reservoirs very deep in the crust of Mars. Surprising, the amount of water we're talking about from this one reservoir that it found, it could actually cover the entire red planet in about a 1 kilometer thick ocean. Wow. So it's staggering what we're talking about. If we could access it, then definitely this would be a boon for future colonists. But even though this may not be accessible, this particular reservoir, the idea of using seismometry, this technique, the proof of concept has been made with this mission. And now there's talk about maybe dropping a whole bunch of seismometers all over the planet so they can detect other reservoirs that would possibly be much more accessible, closer to the surface that we could easily drill to and access. The bets are that they exist. We just have to find them. And if we can, those would be the major locations, probably the main target sites for any future human colonies to be established around.
Interesting indeed. So we go from the, finally, we go from the red planet to that orange orb that we all circle, that being the sun. And the sun might have just had a record-breaking number of visible sunspots. I'm thinking melanoma.
Yeah, or a bad case of acne, that's for sure. It's crazy. Like the sunspots go in a cycle. Okay, so that's what people should understand, is that it's an 11-year cycle that we're talking about, that where it ebbs and flows, how much sun. And these little dark blemishes, by the way, they look small on images, but most of them are as large or many times the size of planet Earth. So they're really monster-sized objects on the surface of features on the sun, and they represent cooler, stormy regions. That's where these sunspots are, where solar flares emanate from, and these charged magnetic ejections that basically where the sun belches off these huge clouds of charged particles that if it hits the Earth, if it's just in the right way, it causes auroras, and geomagnetic storms can knock out electricity, cause those beautiful lights as well. So radio blackouts, things like that. So we're really keen on studying these, and we happen to be in the peak of a solar cycle, this 11-year cycle, and at what we call solar max. And we're just heading, like the latter half of 2024 and 2025 will be the absolute peak. And we've now recorded something of this one day in August, early August, we recorded 337 individual sunspots. I'm an observer of the sun. I have a small backyard telescopes, and I look at them, and I can maybe on a really busy day on the sun, I can count maybe 20 or 30 sunspots at most, and I'm really excited. I can't imagine 337 is really incredible. It shows really how far into the solar max we are. The question now is there going to be any effect on Earth? Probably. We've already seen it in the last few months. We've had amazing northern lights displays, very intense, the strongest on the Richter scale of geomagnetic storms. We've been experiencing that over the last few months. And indications are that it's just going to ramp up in the latter half of this year and into next year. So buckle up, everyone, because I think we're going to see a lot more auroras, probably radio blackouts coming as the sun just reaches that peak of the solar cycle.
Wow. My one suggestion to the sun, copious amounts of Clearasil. Anyway, thank you very much, Andrew, for being on the program.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And if folks want to find out more about the night sky, I invite them to come and visit me every week on my YouTube channel, The Night Sky Guy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Clear skies.
Andrew Fazekas, The Night Sky Guy. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0784, and you'll find links to Andrew's site to get your own personal autographed copy of his books. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And we have a few more Stuff File news stories before we get to our Idiot of the Day, so let's get right to it, shall we? At the busy new Chitose Airport in Hokkaido, Japan, everything came to a screeching halt on August the 17th after a pair of scissors went missing from a store near the boarding gates. The airport canceled 36 flights and delayed more than 200 others, leaving hundreds of travelers doing repeat security checks. Flights eventually resumed, but the scissors weren't found until the next day at the store where they went missing. Social media users were strikingly complimentary and upbeat about the delays, though. Said one poster, "This incident showcased the safety of Japanese aviation." See, this is the difference between social media in the Far East and social media here in the whiny West. Yeah. As Hurricane Debbie was hitting Florida, Citrus County Sheriff Mike Pendergrass went out to assess damage. But his attention was diverted by an apparent drunk driver, and he pulled the woman over. 38-year-old Candace Wisecup tried talking her way out of an arrest by claiming she couldn't walk a straight line because of the hurricane winds. But that didn't explain her breath or slurred speech, let alone the 3 empty booze bottles and an open can of beer in her car. Wisecup refused to submit to a breath test and was arrested. You know, for some, a hurricane will drive them to drink. And boys and girls, it's that moment we've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Modern technology and today's burgeoning cashless society makes bank robberies passé. And in small communities like in Vermont, multiple bank robberies just isn't bright. A Bellows Falls man faces federal charges after authorities say he pulled off 3 bank robberies in 2 days. 42-year-old Stephen Lowe walked into the M&T Bank in Springfield and demanded cash. Later that afternoon, he went to the Claremont Savings Bank, also in Springfield, and handed a teller a note demanding $500 in cash. He then stole a car from a gas station. The next morning, Lowe went to the M&T Bank in Putney and again demanded cash, this time $1,500. Police caught him later that day, and he admitted to robbing the banks. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. Now, why? Oh, why? Would you think that in this day and age, you can rob 3 banks in 2 days, all in the same area, and get away with it? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0784. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com. And once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0784. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, or you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WLSLLP FM in Dade City, Florida, KZZHLP FM in Eureka, California, CKUW FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, CFQR 600 in Montreal, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. If you were listening to this at the same time as watching The Wizard of Oz and listening to Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, well, it's a waste of electricity. There are some things you just can't multitask.